All right, so let's continue. So again, we were on metaphase, which is the second step of the division of the nucleus. And again, metaphase, if you can remember, M stands for middle. That will help you to remember that this is when the chromosomes line up in the middle of the cell. Okay. The next step is anaphase. So anaphase, I want you to think away or apart. Okay, so I would make a note. Anaphase, this is when chromatids are being separated or moving away from each other or apart from one another, right? So again, this is a twin of this. Each of these are chromosomes, or what we call sister chromatids. So they're actually being pulled away from each other because, again, our goal is to end up with two daughter cells that have identical genetic information to the original, right? So we pull one sister chromatid to this side, another to this side. So now we know we have identical genetic info on each of the opposite sides of this cell, which will eventually become two. So same with this. This sister chromatid was identical to this one. We've separated them from each other. We're pulling them to opposite sides or opposite poles. So finally, the last step in mitosis or nuclear division is telophase. So telophase is basically the opposite of prophase. So here you can see that we've separated out our chromosomes, right? So we have identical, if you count here, you'll notice that you have identical chromosomes here that you do to this side, right? And so that was the whole goal of this process. You'll also notice that things are happening to basically make the cells return to normal. So the nucleus is reforming, the nuclear membrane is reforming here. The chromosomes are also going to decondense or not be as strictly organized because they don't have to divide anymore. They're going to go back to chromatin and be more loose like spaghetti, right? Your spindle fibers are also breaking down, and your nucleolus will eventually show up again also. You'll notice too, as telophase is happening, also the cell is starting to pinch in here because what was one cell is going to become two cells, right? So we get this pinching in and what we call a cleavage furrow, which is part of the next step, which typically happens simultaneously with telophase. And I just want to make a note here, I am short of breath, but it's not COVID, it's still the pregnancy because the baby's big, okay? So sorry about that. Okay, so the very last step of this cell division process is cytokinesis. So hopefully you remember cytoplasm is basically the fluid in the cell, right? Cytokinesis is the separation of one cell into two or the division of the cytoplasm, okay? So basically we started with one cell. You're going to get a cleavage furrow here as the cell starts to pinch in, and then eventually what was one cell will separate into two. And you'll notice that now we have two separate nuclei in each of these daughter cells. Okay, so this is a picture of an animal cell and how it separates. So because we don't have cell walls, we just have cell membranes, we can form that cleavage furrow and just pinch in and separate out into two separate cells, right? Plant cells are a little bit different. So plant cells have cell walls. So they're not really they can't really pinch in and just separate out from each other because they're not as fluid, right? They're going to stick together. So basically in plant cells, we have what is called a cell plate that actually forms between the two new nuclei that we just formed. So this cell plate is just going to basically be a wall that's stood up between those two nuclei and then separates out what was one cell into two cells here. So just minor differences in how cytokinesis happens for animal cells versus plant cells. And that is it for the lecture today. Again, I just want to remind you that if we go all the way back to the beginning and talk about mitosis, the whole reason why cells divide, right, is because your cells basically need to be able to repair, they need to be able to replace, and they need to be able to grow, right? So when you think about, again, with repair, think about your finger gets cut, right? And you need new skin cells to form. Those new skin cells form by mitosis, by this whole process of cellular division, right? To replace, right? So that's replacing old skin, so similar, right? And also growth. So again, mitosis is super important, and hopefully you remember as well that part of this whole process, right, of us growing and developing is a characteristic of life. Okay, so please reach out with any questions that you have, and I hope you have a great day. And again, this is just day one. My husband's been suggesting that I incorporate some props and such, so we'll see if I can come up with anything a little more entertaining. All right, take care, guys.